Welcome to the final episode of LAOFCS Weekly. For 2018, we're going to be talking about the best and worst of 2018. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
Happy holidays, everyone. It is finally the end of 2018, and I think I say this with everyone at the table. Thank God it's over. 2018 might have been a great year for movies, but man, everyone who I know, personal life has not been too hot for them. I, of course, am Scott Menzel, and today I am joined by two of my favorite people in the whole wide world. So, introduce yourself. Let's start with Rama.
Hello, my name is Rama Tampubolon from ramascreen.com and the YouTube channel Rama Screen. Thank you for having me back, and I'm a member of LAOFCS.
And where can we find you?
Oh, yes. YouTube.com/ramascreen1.
And I'm Kit Bowen. Happy to be here, Scott. It's been a little while since I've had a chance to come on the show, but I'm happy to be here. Film critic and editor for Screen Picks, also a member of the lovely organization here. You can find me at The Movie Kit. And yay, we can talk movies today.
Yes. So,
and didn't like.
So this show is actually being recorded the day before, so we don't have the movie pick of the week. So we're still voting on that. So you can check out the Twitter and the Facebook for this organization, and tomorrow it'll be posted. So 2018, I feel like, was a very interesting year for films. I feel like there were some really great movies. I feel like there were a lot more disappointments this year, at least for me personally. And then the worst movies were bad, but not as bad as in previous years. So I know we all made our lists. Let's kind of go through some of your favorites of the year first. To start off on a positive note.
Well, why don't you start?
Okay. So, it's interesting because every year, I love to talk about this, is that every year I start off my film exploration by going to the Sundance Film Festival, and year after year, there's movies that I love that come out of that festival. And, a lot of people seem to say, like, Sundance, who really needs to go to Sundance? I feel like there's a lot of criticism about it each and every year. The movies weren't as good this year as they were last year. And it's kind of ironic that a lot of people said that this particular year, because 3 of my favorite movies of the year came out of that. And that is Won't You Be My Neighbor, 8th Grade, actually 4, Tully, and Searching.
Yeah.
These are just great films and ones that I absolutely adore. And I mean, Won't You Be My Neighbor is the film, and I've been saying this all year, but this is the movie that we needed this year. Yeah. This is the feel good, be kind to one another, reminder that we can all get along even when the times are tough.
Yeah, but it also made me miss Fred Rogers. Like, we just wish if he was just still around, maybe he could keep that message alive. I know it's in our hearts. And definitely that's what the spirit of that documentary is about. But, I feel like we still need you, Fred.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. How about you, Kid? I'm
a little more of the populist.
Okay.
This year, I was really I'm liking a lot of the superhero movies. Black Panther starting things off was pretty spectacular. I loved Avengers: Infinity War. I loved Ant-Man and the Wasp. To be honest with you, I really like that. But I think, as far as some of the smaller films or some of the other films, A Quiet Place was one of my faves for sure. And that came out early on, and I'm hoping it'll get maybe a little bit of Oscar love. I don't think it will, but I still hold out hope that it might get some. Black Klansman, I'm sure that's on a lot of your lists.
Yes,
love it.
Also, the ones that have been released recently, Ben is Back.
Oh,
We've
of
been
course.
a big proponent of Ben is Back. We Scott and I both love that movie.
Yes.
It still sits with me. I also loved Vice. So I'm gonna just put it. I know it's kind of divided, and it's not
Well,
necessarily getting all the greatest reviews.
That is I'm glad you brought that one up. That is fascinating because when the reviews dropped, if you looked at all the Twitter reactions, this is kind of like it's almost having one of the DCU universe kind of fucking things going on right now, where like Vice originally was like praised. Every reaction I saw about Vice was like, oh my God, this movie's amazing, blah, 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 blah. And then the reviews dropped, what is it, like 2 or 3 days ago, and they were so lukewarm. Where everyone's, I mean, I seen certain people even call this the worst film of the year,
Yeah,
which
know.
I thought was like, what?
It was problematic, but I liked it overall.
Yeah.
You know, the whole narration thing was too ever present. You know, it was like a documentary at times.
Well, that's kind of his style. Adam
But,
McKay
yeah, I
is,
suppose.
You know, I guess, and I think I see some of the. I understand some of the criticism, which is, you know, with The Big Short, which
Yes.
everyone loved.
Yeah.
It was kind of a complicated subject about the financial crisis, and so he would have these people pop out and explain, you know, this is what this means, blah blah blah, and it was funny, but it was also informative. He did the same kind of thing with this, and while I thought it was great, I think some people were like, you don't need to explain that to me, kind of thing. It's not as complicated of a story. It's really more of a biopic about Cheney. So it was, they thought that was misplaced. But I didn't like. I thought the whole thing. I mean, just from like on the ground laughing hard
Yeah.
to like going, ugh.
It was a funny movie. I liked it. Don't get me wrong. I didn't hate it. I just hope that people also realize that the actual administration was anything but funny.
No, that's the whole point. That's why you walk away from it going, God.
Yeah, because I mean, the interesting
It's worse
thing,
what's happening now. I mean, it's like,
the thing what's funny about it is, and I read this a lot online yesterday, was people liked The Big Short because at the end of it, they felt the bad guy, even though like there's the message of like, we know that it's going to happen again, there, it still kind of felt like the bad guys sort of got what they deserved. And in this movie, it kind of leaves you on the note, like you pointed out, and I know your husband was very upset about it. Like you just leave very, very angry from this
all
movie.
over again, yeah.
And I think it's one of these movies where we're in a period, we're in a political climate where we don't want to feel angry when we walk out of a movie. I mean, it's the reason, you know, like the whole thing that was going on with The Front Runner, which is a film that I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, like nobody wanted to talk about that aspect of things. No one wanted that right now. And and because of which, you know, you can put Hugh Jackman and J.K. Simmons and all these big names in that movie and no one saw it.
Yeah.
Because no one wanted to see a movie like that right now.
And lastly, just want to say that I'm glad Adam McKay made movies like The Big Short and Vice, because we kind of live in the United States of amnesia. Sometimes people forget and people rehabilitate certain figures that should not be rehabilitated. So it's good that he brings up that era again.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Rama, what's some of yours?
Oh, yes.
Just one
yeah,
more,
go ahead.
just one
Yeah.
A Spider-Verse.
Yes.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's literally I think in my top 3. I was just blown away by that movie, so I'm just gonna.
Really?
I agree.
I
Wow.
loved it. I know he hated it.
No, I didn't hate it. I thought it was okay. Don't start that. I didn't hate it.
He didn't
I-
hate it.
Drums.
It was okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, Spider-Man. No. You don't need to apologize, but because I agree, because Spider-Man is on my list too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably the only superhero movie on my list. There's no Black Panther. There's no Avengers: Infinity
No.
War. As far as Sundance goes, I have Searching and 8th grade Hereditary. That came out Sundance.
Yes,
right?
it did. Thank
Yeah.
you. There
That's
was
on my
another
list,
one.
too.
Yes.
I have
yes.
that on my
It's
list.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and usually, you know, I've never been to Sundance, but usually you probably can correct me if I'm wrong, but people always like, okay, what's the movie that comes out of Sundance that will have the momentum all the way through the year, like Precious, all the way to the Oscars, you know? And, well, I'm hoping any of these three would do that.
Well, you know the
I
funny.
did love 8th grade too, but not enough to put on my top 10 for some reason.
It's not in my 10. It's in my 18. You know, it's funny because the reason why I brought up the whole thing about Sundance
Yeah.
was I remember this year in particular. I've been going for about 6 or 7 years now, and this year, every time I walked out of a film, and when I read about the recap articles, everyone's like, "Who are these movies for?" You know, there was nothing that stand out, and I mean, you like we're literally going through this, and like 5 movies we mentioned came out of Sundance, which I believe is like more than any of the previous years. Like last year, the big one was Get Out. which is kind of funny because it wasn't even on the program. It was a special screening that they just surprised people with, and that was the biggest movie to come out. You know, you think back about Precious. You know, there is usually 1 or 2 movies that come out of there, but this year the fact that there's like 5 or 6 that being talked about, and Sorry to Bother You is another one. Like it's like you can go on, and like people were like, no, it's a weak year. It's like, no, it really wasn't a weak year. It was probably one of the strongest.
Yeah.
But just Mission Impossible Fallout is number 2 for me. I love that film.
I loved it too, but I think some of the other ones were a little higher up for me.
Yeah.
But no, it was great.
It's so amazing. I've watched it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I also see you have
just a bit.
Roma. Roma's also on my list.
Oh man, such a beautiful film. And I know you don't like it, but
It's okay.
I don't know.
I have to defend, like these guys are so hard on me. It's like, I just thought it was okay. I didn't think it was as good as everyone else.
That's okay. I mean, that's the whole point of this thing. I think, well, for Ram and I'm not sure, I'm not speaking for you, but when I was watching it, like, it was just washing over me. Like this tableau of what it was telling. You know, I think somebody said on Twitter, and I retweeted the person, I can't remember who it was, but it was like, the first half of it, you're like, slice of life. You're like, I'm not sure if am I getting into this? But and then all of a sudden it kind of changes tone and becomes, sort of more dramatic in a lot of regards. But like I was saying, I was so immersed in this universe that it just, I thought it was amazing.
No, I agree. I was a little surprised though coming into the screening. I thought, where's Italy? Where's the city of Rome? It's not about Roma. No, just kidding.
Well, apparently that's the name of I think we learned this
It's a town,
last
right?
It's the name of the community in Mexico City.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And and my number 1 is Green Book. Love Green Book.
I really like Green Book too.
I do too.
It's on my list too, pretty high up there, because I just, all the controversy aside with this movie, which I don't get it. People just can't just accept things. Like they have to dig into things and just take it for what it is. Just enjoy it. It's a feel good movie.
Greatest Showman was not about P.T. Barnum.
Right? Yeah. Thank you.
This was a true story. Green Book was a true story. This happened.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and I mean, it's funny because it's talked about in, to talk about the controversy real quickly, it's talked about in the movie about how Don Shirley did not have much ties to any of the family. It's talked about, I did interviews with every single person in this cast. Everyone brought this up. Don Shirley did not want this movie to be made until he passed. He was not close to his family. All this stuff. This is literally like, I feel like we're going into like the election, right? Where it's like, show me the birth certificate. Like, I feel like they're gonna have to release. Like,
he didn't want a movie made about him?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like,
I didn't know that.
He didn't want a movie made when he was alive. Because he didn't want people to know about. He was a very private person.
Oh.
Do just kind of like some of the stuff that's shown in the movie. Like the closeted homosexuality that's in the film, the fact that he never wanted to stir up trouble. And I guess like what the argument is right now is that this stuff can all be said and it's just very one-sided because there's no one on the other side to kind of defend it. And then the few people who are family members, you don't really know if because they don't agree with what the movie's showing and that they didn't know that side of his life.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to know where this really plays and what's being truthful. But I feel like it's an election thing where like they have to release the audio tapes and all the stuff that they use to create this story, and then they can kind of clear their name. But is it really necessary for a freaking movie that's just trying to be entertaining and feel good and just show that two people from two totally different worlds can get along? I don't think so, but apparently other people do.
Well, I thought it was a very sweet movie.
And it's not a outrageous request on the part of Don Shirley. I mean, compared to like Fred Astaire, that actually I think did a clause or something that says that there should be never any movie representation of me on screen whatsoever. I think Fred Astaire did that. And
Did
Ginger,
he really?
yeah. So that's why we never see any depiction of him.
So there's no biopic ever going to be of Fred Astaire. Huh.
Exactly. So
Interesting.
it's not that outrageous, So it's
That's
normal.
very interesting, though. That's it's like before I die, or after I die, you cannot make a movie about
Well,
it.
it's just, I mean, there is this thing, right? There's just stigma in Hollywood that, like, whenever someone passes, or if they're even when they're alive, that the adaptation of their life is going to not be as authentic, or it might paint them in such a negative picture, and their legacy doesn't want to be like tainted.
Right.
And I guess that's the struggle.
All right.
So other ones that I would like to just point out here that I have a lot of love for. I know Rama, was this one on your list, Bohemian Rhapsody?
Yeah, number 9.
Yeah, I have that. It's in 10 for me. And I mean, I thought that was just a great film.
That's my bonus on my honorable mentions, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I love that one. I'm glad you said Quiet Place Kid. I really love that. Another movie that really resonated with me, and I again, it's personal. You know, when we talk about these movies, is Instant Family for me. I
almost put it on there. I really did, because I really walked away from that movie. Talk about feel good, but also you laugh a lot. I mean, it's really it kind of hit a strong chord for me, for sure.
Yeah, it's really emotional, that movie, and I've said this on air when this movie first came out, is that I haven't had this sort of emotional reaction from a film in quite some time. There's a lot of movies where I feel like I relate to characters and stuff like that, but this one where like it reminded me of like my entire life, like my, like seeing, having my brothers being adopted and going through all the struggles of what that was. It just all came flooding back by the time this movie came to a close, and I was just like a freaking mess walking out of it. So.
I think anybody who has, adopted or foster care situation, this movie really just kind of painted a really realistic and poignant and funny picture of it, and it is. It's a great little comedy. I hope that it'll get some life and Blu-ray, and people will.
Yeah.
Can I add to that a little bit?
Sure.
This is Marissa in the booth. Hello, everyone. I actually love this movie as well, and I'm actually adopted, and all my siblings are adopted, so it really hit home to me. And I think they did it so right, the adoption community and the foster community. Like, they shed the perfect balance of light and comedy to it, and yet still...
Heart.
Yeah, definitely heart, but yet took it seriously because it is such a realistic thing, and I think they did a great job.
Yeah.
I did not know that about you. That is fascinating. I don't know if I shared that with you, but I have my brothers, all 6 of them are adopted. Yeah. So it's very, watching a movie like this, I feel like we never seen a movie about adoption that's been entertaining and honest like this. I mean, sure, you can probably watch a documentary, but I've never seen a feature film like this.
And the guy who directed the film, this was his story. This happened to he and his wife, and so there's some, like we said, passion and real perspective thrown into it. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's Sean Anders is the director of this, and I thought he did an incredible job. And apparently, he pasted this whole movie together from not only his story, but he went out to all the foster families and kind of got bits and pieces of their stories, and they put it together. And that they actually had foster parents and foster kids on set, so they wanted to ensure that it was very realistic and true to life. Yeah. So, and let's see.
Do you have a favorite?
Hey, you give. Yeah, no, I was gonna say that. That's my number. I was gonna say that's my number. That's my personal number 1.
Oh, okay.
That's my personal number 1. This movie for me, again, it in a weird way, kind of ties into my personal life, which is weird because people are like, how is this story personal to you? Again, I have 4 brothers who are black. And I have grown up in an environment where I grew up in a mixed race household. And it's fascinating as my brothers have grown up, the differences that I see of how they're treated, how people view them, how it's like to be one way around one white people and be one way around people of their own background. And I felt like this is very honest and very realistic, but also what I loved the most about this was we've seen a lot of movies about race this year, a lot of things about the struggles of being a person of color, but this one being told from a female perspective and a young female perspective is really what sold me on this movie above everything else.
Yeah, it's a great movie. It really is, and I think the family dynamics in this movie is what really drew me in. You know, the father and her parents and how they raise their kids to be hypersensitive, hyper aware, but also, you know, to be yourself, you know, and to live your dreams and to, you know, not feel like you have to be pushed down because of your color. So, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff going on in this. That was great. For me, I think it went on a little too long. That's why it's not one of my tops, but I'm glad that we picked it for Best Picture, though, for the LA Online Film Critics, because it is a very meaningful film.
What struck me was the talk.
Yeah.
You know, the talk that they have when you get pulled over is what you do. And, you know, it hit me when that scene is like, oh, maybe families out there actually have this talk that, you know, certain families like mine did not. And, you know, now you understand why they need to have that talk. Mm-hmm. So that really, like, wow for me.
That really hit me.
Yeah, and the fact that they kind of open up the film
Yeah, with
that, it sets the tone for the rest of the film, all the way up to the end. I mean, there's levels of this movie where it goes to where I felt were really bold choices, especially near the end. I'm not going to spoil it, but there's something with a little kid that happens near the end. And I just thought that was like, you know, we hear stories about stuff like this on the news all the time. Yep. And, you know, here they are showing this in a film, and they're using it almost as like that final gut punch in the movie.
Yeah.
On a not so heavy drama note, one of my honorable mentions is Game Night.
Oh, yes.
I love Game Night. Remember how fun that movie was?
I am such the womp womp of the group. I am like, that's okay too.
You know what? And watching it again, because it's playing on cable right now, watching it again, it gets better. It keeps getting better.
Jesse Plemons
You need to watch it again, Scott. I think you might have.
I saw it twice. It did not work for me. That's one where I really do kind of dislike it. The other ones I think are okay, but that one I'm kind of like, sorry. I know. Roll your eyes. It's okay.
He doesn't like it.
I know. I don't like
He's
anything.
very picky.
Very hit or miss with this guy.
I know you didn't see this movie, Kit. Rama, can we need to talk about this movie because I feel like this is the one of the sleeper hits of the year. A Simple Favor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Blake Lively and Anna Kendrick. Yeah, it was good. It was good.
It's one of the few movies, and I was joking with a friend of mine, it's one of the few movies that I would actually label sexy. Like, I really, like, most movies where they attempt, like we were talking about Disobedience, like there's a scene in Disobedience where I'm like, this is not sexy at all. But Simple Favor, I was kind of like, okay, this is a sexy movie.
Well, I can't wait to see it.
It's not on my list, but it's a good movie, and I remember watching Disobedience too, and and I get where you're coming from now with that argument. Yes, I totally get it.
Well, everyone was talking about it. There's another one came out and said, oh my God, did you see this scene? This scene is so sexy. And I'm like, me and Kit were watching it. We were like, not so much. One more shout out, of course, Paddington 2.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Beginning of the year, I know a lot of people are like rooting for this movie. I mean, they did no push for it. Near the end of the year, of course, it wasn't going to be nominated.
It's one of the sweetest movies you'll ever see.
Oh my God,
If you haven't seen it, please do, because you'll just be touched to your core. It's so sweet.
Yeah, it really is. Rama, start us off with your disappointments.
By the way, you don't say that. You can't say the same about a lot of sequels out there. You know, when it comes to Paddington 2, it was a rare specimen. A sequel that just stands out. Right. Okay, so worst of the worst, right?
Or you want to let's do disappointments first, and then we'll go on to worst.
Disappointments. I have Dumpling. I was looking forward to Dumpling, and that let me down.
Yes, and again, that's another one where I feel like I walked out of it, and I texted you right away, and I was just kind of like, that was really okay at best. And it's weird because it's another one where I feel like a lot of people are really loving. They're really swooning over that
I haven't
movie.
seen it yet.
Really?
And I love Danielle McDonald.
Yeah.
She is, to me, one of the most.
Patty cakes.
Yeah, she's like so underrated. She was in there was another adaptation of a book that she was in, and like it just went nowhere. And she's in something else coming out at Sundance this year. I really hope someone, pushes her at some point and like really makes her a star, because she has talent and she's great. But the movie just, Bex in that movie was just like the most annoying, irritating character. Like it was just like,
The material stinks.
Yeah.
The writing. And then the other disappointment is Marwen. That's what I have.
Welcome to Marwen.
Marwen. I was looking forward to that one.
Me too.
full disclosure, out of every single film that came out in 2018, with how much I was disappointed with, I don't know, First Man, Beautiful Boy, nothing hit me the hardest like how disappointing Marwen was. Because Steve Carell, Robert Zemeckis, this story, which is, based on a documentary, based on a real life story, Marwen Call, which is, if you haven't seen this documentary, do yourself the favor and check it out. It is fascinating. But this movie is just so mediocre. There's no nice way to put it. I think I'm being nice by saying it's mediocre, because I have seen multiple people post that this is one of the worst movies of the year. I wouldn't go that far, but you see the potential. This movie opens so strong. That first scene of the movie
Starts out strong.
It's really great, and then you start building, and it, we shouldn't go into too much of reviews, but like there's
It's coming out this week.
yeah, there's a traumatic event that happens to Mark Hogenkamp. And the film just keeps hinting at it, hinting. And it never shows it to a point where it gets that emotional effectiveness that you need it to get to. And then you have these women of Marwen who like should be the most fascinating and interesting characters, and they are never explored. It's like, I don't know what the hell they were thinking.
Yeah.
The visual aspect of the film is fascinating. You seeing these dolls brought to life with, their faces, on the bodies, like that's sort of fascinating. But you only can be fascinated by that for so long until you need the story and you need the character development. And that's where this movie just falls.
I agree.
And one last thing. They make Mark Hogenkamp, as the movie goes on, into such a pathetic, perverted, creepy guy.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is so unfair to him as a person.
I know.
Like, I think there's a scene where he just randomly watches porn that I have no idea why they threw it in.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels so awkwardly like thrown in there. And then there's this story that goes on with him and Leslie Bibb that just like it just
Leslie Mann.
Leslie Mann.
Yeah.
Sorry, Leslie Mann. Yeah, that I'm just like.
I agree with all those points, and to add a few more, if I may. There's a point in the film where I felt like, oh, you know what? I feel like I just want to stay in the doll animated sequence world or the Marwen world. I don't want to know about the human, characters. They're boring. But it got too repetitive. It got exhausting. The whole fighting Nazis again. That's all they got. It's like you said, like give me something, give me substance here, and they never give it to me. And then also, the other point I have was the inclusion of Back to the Future. I guess that's a spoiler thing, but I don't understand why that has to be in there. It's so distracting. Look, I get it. Robert Zemeckis directed the film. I get it. Like, we'll have a time machine, a DeLorean-like kind of vehicle, but it just takes you out of the story. Is like, what is going on? I didn't like it.
Well, I missed it. So,
what are some disappointments for you, Ken?
well, I think we're all gonna agree with this one. Mary Poppins Returns.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really look. It isn't a horrible movie by any stretch. It isn't like just where you're rolling your eyes. Although I yawned a lot. It just didn't capture my imagination like the original.
You.
None of the songs were all that catchy to me, and I literally just watched it the whole time thinking, gosh, I just want to go home and watch the original again. It was trying so hard, though. That's the thing. It was trying so hard to be like the original or to be a good follow-up to the original. Emily Blunt is still amazing in it. She brought something to the character that enhanced it, I thought. But just the rest of it was just like, I literally was yawning. I literally was looking at my watch. And it's sad the thing is I don't think everybody feels that way about this movie because it's getting a lot of great reviews, and I think it'll probably make a lot of money.
I wouldn't say that. I would say it's getting like like lukewarm to good reviews. There's a few people who are like over the moon about it, but that was something like leading up to the release where I felt like, oh, this is going to come out. It's going to have like a 98%. It's going to be like thing. It's not as well received.
Still has a pretty good percentage on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, I think it's in the 70s.
I don't know. It just didn't grab me.
Yeah,
and I wanted it to.
Me too.
Especially with Emily Blunt, and I thought Lin-Manuel Miranda would be a great addition. He kind of wasn't.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's a good point.
But Ben Wislaw, who plays the older Michael, I thought he was really good. So really, between those two, Emily and Ben, I'm like, okay, I'm somewhat into this. But then the rest of it's like,
agreed.
Thoughts, Rama?
It got to the point where I think our mutual friend Jana brought this up. Lin-Manuel Miranda kept popping up. It felt like a Lin-Manuel Miranda Returns movie. It's like, why does Jack have to be in the scene? He keeps showing up.
It is a little distracting that he's in the movie more than Mary Poppins. You kind of wonder, like, why. And too much so that I felt like he was playing too much of an homage to Dick Van Dyke. In the original, like, it was just like
a little slightly better job with the accent. But
yes.
Not that much.
No.
By the way, the best part of the movie is the Dick Van Dyke cameo, so I'm just going to throw that out there. And
yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's the only point in the movie. Well, no, there's 2 points. There's a scene where she comes down from the sky that kind of gave me goosebumps a little bit because it's kind of like that iconic character coming back. And then it was like flat, and then it's like that Dick Van Dyke scene, and you're kind of like, of course this was gonna happen, but it works.
It does work. It works. Everyone cheered.
Oh my god! That was the weirdest thing. I was the only one. The funny story. Me and Ashley went to see this, and we went to a guild screening, and it was one of the very first guild screenings. And at the end, Emily Blunt and Rob Marshall came out. We were the only two. We're such assholes. We're the only 2 people in the theater who didn't stand up and like applaud the movie. We literally sat there until like everyone was done because it was just like it's weird. I just didn't feel that overwhelming like rush for this movie.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you pointed out that the songs weren't catchy. I'm glad you pointed out that there's too much of Lin-Manuel in this movie. I mean, Meryl Streep is completely freaking pointless in this movie. There was just such unnecessary reminders of the original where it just feels so lazy. Yeah. Like there's there is a kite in the movie, but we can't have a song about a kite, so we'll have a song about a balloon. And it's like, okay, great. And then there's like hey, we didn't have, I'm not going to spoil who appears, but like we couldn't get Julie Andrews, so we'll get someone else to, come back. And it's like, yeah. Yeah,
so that was a disappointment.
It was a huge disappointment.
Agreed.
Do you have any more that you want to mention for disappointments, or should we move on to worst?
Worst.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Worst.
All right. So worst. Kit, start us off.
Oh gosh. Well, going through the list of all the films released, I had to remind myself of what I was like. Ugh. 1517 to Paris.
Yes.
Clint Eastwood movie that literally was 2 hours of wasted time and an hour and 20 minutes of wasted time and about 20 minutes of action. That was kind of compelling. Then the rest of it was like, trying to use the real guys. It was just a total miss on my part. 50 Shades Freed, of course, everyone's going to have.
Oh, yes.
I mean, just so eye rolling. But at the same time, it can also be one of those, I just might turn it on for a second and then go, yeah, that's still bad. Red Sparrow was sort of a.
Oh my God, Red Sparrow.
Jennifer Lawrence wasn't bad as an action, but my God, that was
movie.
boring.
Oh my God, that was you, me, Ashley, and Jana?
Yes.
Was it like we went from freaking Gringo
Oh,
to
that's
Red Sparrow?
right, Gringo.
Oh, and
Which was better.
Yeah, which was better, which is amazing because I didn't feel like I was being tortured for 2 hours like I felt when I watched Red Sparrow. That was a run-on joke for like the first half of the year that every time I think I saw you or I saw a couple other people, I said, at least it wasn't as bad as Red Sparrow.
Yeah.
That was like, I kid you not, the movie is about torture, and that movie felt like torture watching it.
It was pretty bad. A Wrinkle of Time was also kind of.
Oh,
so terrible.
Boy, wasted opportunity right there. And it's, again, I feel bad slamming on a movie because it was, it had lofty intentions. It was directed by Ava DuVernay, who's, she's an okay director, and Oprah Winfrey's in it, and it was just like, you just fall asleep. There's just no spark to it at all. Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. Sorry.
Oh, I loved Mamma Mia.
Know.
Yeah.
I just don't. It's just. It's like Mary Poppins. I hate movies where they just break out into song just because they're supposed to break out into song. It just, I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way.
I will listen. I will argue with you and agree with you on that point because my huge criticism with Mary Poppins Returns, if you're someone who loves musicals and follows musicals, and this is where I kind of would say that I would protect Mamma Mia a little bit more, is that some of the songs in Mamma Mia, not all of them, some of them tie into what's going on in the scene or like what's about to happen. In Mary Poppins, the songs just stop the movie dead in its tracks.
Yeah.
There is no point for any of those songs.
Exactly.
As much as people, people know this about me, as much as, people don't like Greatest Showman, the one thing that you can say about that movie is that the music moves the story forward. Every one of those songs makes sense as to why it's in the film at that particular point, and it progresses the story. Mary Poppins Returns does nothing. It's just like, here's a number, we're gonna stop, and then we're gonna go on with the story, and it just.
Well, there were a couple of songs that made sense, but other than that, you're right. It just didn't.
Nothing, but that's the problem. You can't even remember what they were or any of the lyrics.
The one where she's telling them to remember their mother, and that kind of thing. In The Lost Place or whatever. I thought that was sweet. That was about the only song that kind of got to me a little bit. But other than that.
What is the hell is that song?
The Lost Place. Where
Thank
all the
you.
lost things go.
Where all the lost
I think she may have
go.
liked Mary Poppins. Let's see who else I have. Robin Hood.
Oh my God, that movie was terrible.
And then you guys, because I didn't see it, but I'm sure it's on your list, Happy Time Murders.
Yes, I have it on my list.
Yes. Rama, what's on yours?
I have, let's go to the controversial one, Suspiria.
Oh, yeah,
I did not like Suspiria. A lot of people loved it. I don't know. I don't get it. It's grotesque. It's slow.
I can see that.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not even scary to me. Number 8, you like this one, so I don't. Dog Days, I didn't like that one. I know Scott likes Dog Days.
He's a dog person. And there's another one coming out next year. Did you see the trailer?
Yeah, she sent me the trailer for it. Rama Wire sent me the trailer link for it, and of course I'm excited about it.
I didn't like Widows.
Oh, I did.
See, I thought Widows was, again, another one of those movies that was very mediocre.
Okay.
And I know it's split. It's very split.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who really like it and a lot of people who just didn't like it at all.
And the heist was so underwhelming.
Like, that's okay, though. That's what's the point of the movie. The point of the movie is these women, and I don't know. I really liked it.
No,
Sorry.
Listen to Kit.
Okay.
She's the woman at the table.
It's all right.
I mean, it's funny because that. I have noticed it's been more of a divide between men and women for this movie.
Yeah,
so it's very true.
Interesting.
Oh,
Okay.
Except for Ashley, she hated it.
there you go. I'm with Ashley.
Ashley hated it. She fell asleep in it.
Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. I hated that film. It was such a snoozer.
It's all right.
You're not alone on that. I think
Yes.
other people, but I loved it.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, the Genie and Jacob storyline was just awful. Beautiful Boy, of course.
Yeah.
More of a disappointment than something I didn't like. It was just more of a disappointment.
The Happy Time Murders is what you have. The Spy Who Dumped Me. The Predator and Mile 22.
Yeah.
Oh, Mile 22. Mile 22, and I think, oh God, I don't know. I mean, I really might have to put Red Sparrow as my number one. But
Did you forget about that one?
no, I had it on here, but I have it like a little bit higher, and I'm kind of like, why did I have that so high? For me, it's a toss between, for number 2 would probably be Superfly and Mile 22. I think walking out of, I mean, I was tortured in Red Sparrow, but I mean, watching Superfly and Mile 22, I just couldn't roll my eyes any harder.
It made you surprised because I like Peter Berg's Lone Survivor, The Kingdom, and Mile 22 looks like the work of somebody who didn't know how to make films. It was just like, who is this guy?
He definitely has a certain style that was overplayed in Mile 22. It's that, cut, all this action and handheld and running around. And, I mean, I didn't think it was that bad, but definitely not one of Peter Berg's.
No. And I mean, Mark Wahlberg. That's all I have to say about that movie. Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, he was really,
He was something else.
With his wristband.
He went in a different direction on that one.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Of course, I said 50 Shades Free. Let me see if there. Oh, the Meg.
Oh, of course.
The Meg.
The Meg.
I can't.
The Meg.
I know you
The
can't.
Bears. The Meg.
I can't say horrible things just because I love sharks. So
Yeah.
much.
Oh, you like Shark Week?
Here's your surprise for you. Since you said I love dog movies. One of the worst movies of the year, Show Dogs. By far.
I forgot about that.
By far. All right. I love when dogs are cute and cuddly and they're doing stuff, not when they're doing fart jokes and poop jokes and
And
like
when they
getting
talk.
and getting their testicles shaved. No, I'm not into
So
that.
you don't like dogs with Will Arnett?
Yeah. Will Arnett. I love you
could
on
be a
Arrested.
squirrel, but maybe not a dog.
I love him on Arrested Development. Some of the things he does,
Batman, of
but
course.
my
Yeah.
God, like some of his roles, he needs
Lego
another. He
Batman.
needs a new agent. He needs a new agent.
Show dogs.
Very controversial one for me is Support the Girls.
I didn't see it.
I did not
I
like
didn't like
this
it
movie either. I remember and it's funny because you brought up Quiet Place earlier. Quiet Place I saw at South by, and I think that was like the highlight of South by this year. And then right after it, I saw Support the Girls. And I mean, just like going from a high to like a low of like, when is this over? Let me check my watch. Like it just wasn't good. And I mean, Regina Hall, again, she's another incredible actress, and she carries this movie. And I feel so bad because she's giving this movie 100%. But I feel like the story and the supporting cast are definitely not. And that was a weak one. And then, of course, I have to mention it's high up on my list. Like it won't. If I was doing a 10, it wouldn't be in the 10. But Venom for me.
Venom is very problematic.
Yeah, Venom is very problematic.
Literally, Venom. Like I've said this before, but the last 10 minutes of the movie is what the whole movie should have been about. So it redeems itself for me at the very end, but that whole leading up to that, it's like,
Yeah,
but maybe they'll do. It did make a lot of money, right? It did, right?
Oh, it's made more money than Wonder Woman.
Yeah. So I'm sure they will do a sequel, and then hopefully that can fix some of we won't have that origin thing. I mean, origin stories are tough. You really have to. You just have to think outside the box when you're telling those stories, because you're setting all the characters up and you're doing all of this stuff, and so you want to tell the story, but then somehow you have to make it compelling. And I think they should just maybe say 10 minutes of, oh, this is how he became, and then show him as Venom. So it'd be my suggestion.
Interesting argument to that. One of the things that I liked about Aquaman was that the movie kind of opens up and it kind of does the origin story in the first 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives you background on the character, his family, and then it switches gears, and instead of focusing on the origins, becomes like this hero's journey and kind of like finding your voice, which I guess is partially an origin story, but one that feels a little bit more refreshing, that it's not, like it's all focused like, how did he get here? How did he get his powers? Like they just kind of don't even go into that, where like Venom is just like the whole entire movie up until the last 10 minutes is that, and you're kind of like, oh, enough of this. So just a shout out to Aquaman.
It's true. Aquaman did do it well, I thought.
Yeah.
My honorable mention is Sicario, Day of the Soldado.
I liked that one too.
Did you see The Mule?
I haven't seen The Mule.
Okay.
Yes. The first Sicario I loved, it was, a revenge, and then this clash
God, so
between
good.
Emily Blunt, who's like, by the book, between, and that, and then Benicio was like, no, I gotta do justice my own way. But this one was just a war on drugs policy. I just hated it.
Yeah, but I thought Benicio still did a great job with that character. I liked that character a lot. And then the girl was really good.
Isabella.
Who's also an instant
she's a rising
family.
star.
I mean, it's interesting because Sicario I didn't wind up seeing because I felt like so many people whose opinion I kind of trust came out of it and said like, no, this is not good. So like it was one of those movies that I purposely missed. And I know it was out for a couple of weeks. It did fairly well at the box office, but I just avoided it because everyone who I knew said was like, you shouldn't see this. Don't waste your time. I wish I didn't hate Suspiria as much as you did. It's another one where I'm kind of like, it's fine, but I wish I didn't watch it. I will say that. I wish I had the 2.5 hours of my life back, because it's one of those movies
so
that like
long.
left nothing, like had no effect on me.
Yeah.
And I've said this before on this show, and I don't mean any disrespect, but I just don't get Dakota Johnson. I just don't get her. Like, I don't get the appeal. I don't get why she's... Even Bad Times at El Royale, which is another one of my disappointments.
She's good in that, though. I thought she was good in that.
It's probably the best that she's done, but, like, when you compare what she's done in the past and, like, all the other works, it's not saying a whole hell of a lot. I don't... Again, it's just my opinion. But the takeaway from this show should always be that Emily Blunt shines in pretty much anything she does.
Yeah.
Doesn't
matter.
It doesn't matter what she's doing. She would be great.
She can look horrible and be drunk and like Girl on a Train or Sicario, or she can be super pretty Mary Poppins, or she could be like, horribly,
Quiet Place.
Quiet Place, where she, oh my God, that scene. That alone should she should just get special recognition for trying to have a baby quietly. I mean,
In the bathtub.
Unbelievable, that scene. I was just, holy hell. Anyway, alone, Emily, you get the Academy Award for me. Just having a baby.
I mean, honestly, like...
That was a good reason for an award. Yes. I love that.
Best childbirth sequence goes to Emily Blunt.
And then the best performance of a mother having a baby and dealing with all that was Tully. Was Charlize Theron and Tully. I know we mentioned Tully, but there were some really good movies this year about moms, and the realistic portrayal of a mom, and Charlize was amazing in that film, and it's too bad that came out so early, because I think if it came out now, she'd be on a lot of the top lists.
Yeah, that was her.
Yeah. I mean, although I know Glenn Close for The Wife has still got a lot of momentum. I think because it's Glenn Close and she's never won, and there's all of that sort of behind it. But I feel like Charlize got a little bit shafted having come out.
She
so
totally
early.
did, and speaking of that movie, I feel poor Jason Reitman this year. I mean, Jason Reitman, who's both these movies, I of course Tully is a lot higher on the list of greatness than Frontrunner, but he had two really solid films, and both of them, two different studios and everything, and both of them just went kaput. Like they came and went so quickly, and it's a shame because he had such a rough period there for a while. Like he did Labor Day, which everyone really hated on him for. I like this movie, but Men, Women, and Children, I know a lot of people really had issues with that. So to kind of come out and have two really solid films and for them to do nothing, I mean, it's got to be a little like heartbreaking for him. as a director.
Yeah.
And
But don't give up hope, Jason.
No, please don't.
and just just throwing this in, like, with Tully and Christian Bale in Vice, it takes, we know that it takes more than just gaining your weight for a performance to shine, and that because otherwise Jared Leto in that Mark David Chapman movie, he would have wanted to, but all he did was just gain weight in that one. So and then compare that to John C. Reilly, with the putty thing makeup in the Stan and Ollie.
Thank you for bringing that up. He was great in that movie.
Exactly.
But he didn't gain weight for that.
Yeah, kind of like Gary Oldman in last year's Darkest Hour.
Right.
So it's just an interesting observation, in my opinion.
Yes, transformations are always big.
Well, that is an interesting point, Rama. Thank you for bringing it up.
But Charlize and Christian did gain weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this has been an interesting the last couple of years. It's been all about the transformative performance of becoming someone else. I mean,
there are a lot of years are like.
I mean, but this year, I mean, you look at it's Rami Malek,
yes,
and Christian Bale.
Yes.
I mean, it's just there's a lot of different ones. I mean, Gary Oldman was the talk of the town last year.
Yeah.
So.
And even Lady Gaga in Star is Born. We didn't really talk about Star is Born, which I think we all liked, just not on our top tens. But her, too, because she downplays. And they always love it when you downplay your looks, or where you're looking plain, or where you have a prosthetic nose, or you have, something like that. Academy loves that stuff.
I mean, I really enjoyed Star is Born, but,
I liked the first half, and then the second half kind of...
I don't know what happened with me for that movie. Like, I came out of TIFF, and I was so high on it. And then, like, as I saw more and more movies, it just kind of got pushed, kept getting pushed. And it's weird for me to say this because I know, and I think we all kind of agree with this, so it's weird that we can say this as a panel. I think Bohemian Rhapsody stands out more than A Star is Born.
Well, I mean, and to give it credit, Star is Born, they did have some incredible original songs in that.
And the live concert sequences.
Yeah, and I think that alone was a plus. But Bohemian Rhapsody has Queen behind it, and I mean, come on, you can't. That last scene at Live Aid, I mean, you can't not but cheer. You can't feel like you're right there watching them. I mean, that was the beauty of that movie, was watching almost that lead up to that scene. To that performance, because you feel like you're right there, and it's Queen's music. Now some people might not like Queen, that's fine, then clearly you're not gonna like Bohemian Rhapsody. But
is there people who don't like Queen?
My mother doesn't really like Queen.
Interesting. I guess there is people who also don't like the Beatles.
There are some Queen songs I don't like, but there's so many of them I do. So
But to your point though, like, for example, with A Star is Born, First Man, the buzz, oh my God, the buzz, coming to Toronto. Yeah. And then it just dies down after the movie premiered in October, or arrived in October. Like, I don't hear any more buzz about it, at least for me. Yeah. Did you?
No, I mean, that movie was dead on arrival for me. I've talked to you about it. And it's weird because, again, it's not one of those movies where I would say is bad. There's elements of it where I think are great, and then there's other elements that I think are very lukewarm, mediocre. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense to me because what I find interesting about this award season, and it's usually how it is in every award season, is that there's certain themes and topics and issues that are brought up and are at the focus of a lot of these movies. And, when you look at something like First Man, what is that selling to an audience? It kind of feels like, do we really need another space movie? What makes this one stand out?
Space race movie.
Yeah.
Space race movie. Like I said, I think for me anyway, I was watching it and I was compelled by some of the visuals, and certainly I thought Ryan Gosling did a nice job with the role because he's a very stoic person, but there was a lot of layers you could see going on, which I thought Ryan did a nice job with. But yeah, I just was watching it thinking I could go see The Right Stuff. I don't know, I just felt like there's been movies told of that same thing told better. I mean, Apollo 13, I mean, it's,
Yeah, I also, just a casual observation before we go is that I feel like every year there's a couple movies that come out, since we talked about this a little bit earlier, that I feel like studios are really wanting to go to bat for, or the studio itself, they think they're going to have a strong year and they get absolutely nothing. And this year was weird because I feel like Universal really got the shit end of the stick with that because they had First Man, and then like when First Man didn't take off, they were riding on Green Book, and then Green Book, like in the last couple of weeks, has turned into this like, you know, this one really, you know, like kind of thing. So like they're kind of like the odd man out, and then I just feel terrible for Amazon. Amazon this year was just, you know,
well, they're kind of still new to the game.
they're new to the game, but it's like they have You Were Never Really Here, which is kind of like the quiet one. But, you know, like Beautiful Boy, I think they were hoping for. Suspiria, they were really hoping for. And it's just like that. I mean, both of those had no chance in hell.
Yeah. Well, you know, interestingly, as we close out, though, I am very curious to see how this award season pans out because there is no clear frontrunner at all. I mean, it's just like you said, Green Book was kind of moving forward, but you know, there's a lot of backlash against it, and you know, it's The Favorite's another one that's getting a lot of. I think it's getting more momentum now. And it is a weird film, though. Is it too weird for the Oscars, though? I'm not sure. You know, so I don't know. It's going to be kind of fun. It's fun. Also nerve-wracking because you want to pick the right one, but it's going to be hard.
I think that's always hard. I mean, when you come out.
Yeah, but usually at this point we have like 2, maybe 3. And this time, I don't know.
I think.
Yeah, like the King's Speech versus The Social Network.
Yeah.
Right?
And last year it was. Well, Shape of Water was a big one.
Three
billboards. Yeah.
And what was the third one? There was the third one that was sort of getting a lot of.
But those were the front runners, the 2 front runners, I believe.
Yeah, those were the 2 front
runners.
runners.
And then the year before that, it was La La Land and Moonlight. Those were the 2. Like there was. I mean, this year it's kind of like will it be Black Panther? Will it be Roma? Will Green Book
Klansman, I think.
Yeah, Black Klansman. Yeah,
might have a good.
I mean, you know, let's just break down the rules and just give it to "Won't You Be My Neighbor." I mean, like as like the best picture. You know, like that's it. You know, this is the movie we need right now. Forget about it. Just give it. Break down. Like documentary wins best picture. That would be great. Yeah. I would love to see that. You know, even if it's not that movie, give it a free solo or something. Which is another great movie.
It's probably one of the tougher years I can remember in a while. Where it's just nothing's just, you know, hitting you over the head going, yeah, this will definitely win.
Because you're right, because the critic circle's choices have come out, and like there's no certain common thread, you know, like
just Roma. Roma is like Roma is across the board.
Roma
like
comes up
in
a lot,
like so
but
many.
Not for Best Picture.
Probably like top 10.
In quite a few.
Was it?
Yeah,
okay.
quite a few. I mean, and that just goes to Netflix showing their marketing strategy and how much they push this movie. I mean, I posted about this, like they have pushed this movie harder than any studio has pushed any movie in recent memory. And I mean, congrats, because they're getting all the love that they wanted for it.
Yeah, but will the foreign film aspect?
That's what I'm wondering.
That's the good question.
It's a question, right? So usually when that happens, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or you know, one of those type movies,
Life is Beautiful,
where it got a nomination for Best Picture, but they're like, well, it's gonna win foreign films.
Yeah.
So.
Last question then, before, and this is absolutely the last because we got to go. But would you be happy if Roma won Best Picture?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd have a party.
You would have a party?
I would agree.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
So that's it for this episode. See us in 2019. That's weird to say. Rama and Kit, thank you for being on here. Where can they find you one more time?
At the Movie Kit. That's my Twitter, so please follow me. And I screen pics also on my site. Check it out.
And on ramascreen.com. You can find me also on Facebook and Twitter, Ramascreen, and youtube.com/ramascreen1.
Ramascreen 1.
Yeah.
Number 1. That's right. Number 1. All right. I am Scott Menzel. Thank you so much for a great year. Thank you so much for supporting this show. We'll be back in early January. We're going to probably do the most anticipated films of 2019 in that episode. And just have a wonderful holiday season. Be safe. Have a lot of fun. And we'll see you next year. Take care.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.